Hi, everyone. Welcome. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining the Transforming Agriculture with AI, the IAAI Monthly Dialogue Series. Today's webinar will be called The Data Dilemma. We're going to start with an icebreaker question. How would you describe the current state of agricultural data for AI development? So as we let people join, be thinking about this question. I'm going to open a poll right now. I'll launch it. It's now live. So as you're joining, welcome. Welcome to those that are joining us for the first time. Welcome back to those who have been with us for the first two webinars. Welcome. We have a question up on screen. How would you describe the current state of agricultural data for AI development? The poll is open now. I'll keep it live for a little bit longer, and we'll get started. So over to you, Monojit.
Hello, everybody. Those who are joining us for the third time, welcome back. And everybody else, please welcome to the webinar. My name is Monojit Choudhury. I'm the Chief Scientist of the Institute of Agriculture and AI, and also professor at MBZ UAI here in Abu Dhabi. And I work on language technologies and especially on AI for social good. So today, as Courtney already mentioned, our topic is data dilemma. But before we dive into the topic, I wanted to make a few housekeeping rules. So this webinar is being recorded, and we encourage all of you to participate by asking questions or putting in your comments by using the chat feature and the Q&A feature. And those will be active throughout the webinar. And our panelists will try to answer the questions over chat if possible. Otherwise, towards the end, we will have some time for Q&A. Yeah, so how does today's session look like? As we all know, data is the most important thing in AI. Any AI system is as good as data. And there are several important aspects about data. For instance, how do we collect data? How data is shared across different stakeholders? What's the life cycle of the data? And eventually, what outcome or benefit does the data provide to the end user, let's say the farmer, who in the first place helped create that data? So closing the whole loop. And we have four experts who have been spending a lot of time thinking about these issues over the last decade or so, working on various aspects of data. So we'll open the floor with a broad talk by Jawoo Koo from IFPRI. He will talk about the state of the data landscape and also talk about his own work, specifically in agriculture. Then we'll move on to three lightning talks by Manu Chopra from Karya, Jagdish Babu from XTEP Foundation, and Prashanto Ghosh from Indian Institute of Science, Bangalore. And then after that, we will get into a panel discussion where we will discuss various important issues that come up during the talk or even otherwise. And finally, as I said, we will have time for Q&A. Yeah. And now, as you may already know, this is the third webinar in the series. So I would like to take 1 or 2 minutes to tell you a bit more about the journey so far and key takeaways from our first 2 webinars. So we opened this Transforming Ag with AI series with a benchmarking webinar, where we tried to discuss, for any AI system that we deploy, how do we benchmark them? What are the challenges there? And one of the significant things that came up is 70% of you flagged that the most important challenge of deployment of AI systems today is trust. And benchmarking gives us trust. And unfortunately, we often do not have enough data to benchmark these AI systems. Uh, the second webinar was on languages because language is the key to accessing any technology. It's the medium of access. And as we know, 88% of the world's languages spoken by 1.2 billion speakers are not served well by AI. And even with rest of the languages which are served reasonably well by AI, there's a big gap between what we have for, let's say, a language like English or Chinese versus what we have for, let's say, Hindi or Swahili. And this gap is big, and there are several issues or several challenges that needs to be addressed. Now, again, here the point is data. So in short, data is the crux of everything in this AI field, and hence we thought it will be appropriate to have a dedicated, webinar discussing all the issues that we have on data. So with that, let's move on to the webinar. And I would like to welcome our first speaker, Jawoo Koo, who is a senior research fellow at the International Food Policy Research Institute, or IFPRI, where he leads the responsible AI team. He has spent nearly 2 decades building the geospatial data and modeling tools that help policymakers make better decisions on agricultural technology investment across Africa and South Asia. So he's one of the most insightful voices in the room on what it takes to close the agricultural data gap in practice. And Joe will provide us with a broad landscape of what exists today when it comes to agricultural data and what are the challenges and gaps. So over to you, Joe.
Okay, thanks so much for the kind introduction. Let me share my screen. Okay, it is is my screen shared okay? Hopefully it's visible. Okay,
Yeah,
good.
we can see your
Okay,
screen.
good. Yeah, thanks for the introduction, and I'm so happy to be here today. I have so much to talk about for this topic. But let's start with the good news. So good news is that from the agricultural research community side, in collaboration with technical partners and research partners over the years. So we have a platform called Guardian, which indexes all the openly and publicly available publications and data set across the whole entire agricultural research landscape and made them findable and accessible through this platform. I put the URL in the slide that you can take a look. It currently indexes about 470,000, sorry, document and 26,000 data set and 570,000 agronomic data point. Each data point look like this. So for example, uh, out of all the data set available, this platform also provides standardized tabular format of crop yield and different types of agronomic measurement in very organized way. So I think that's a good news. But we are not done, and there are still a lot of challenges behind the scenes. So let me also quickly share a little bit embarrassing story that we learned the hard lesson about data availability. A few years ago, we had a project that needed to understand the relationship between market access and the level of technology adoption. We didn't have a lot of time for this project, so we tried the mobile phone-based survey because the mobile phone ownership was, more than 100% for this particular country. So we saw the pattern to some extent that was expected. As you going far away from the market, then the technology adoption goes down. But then we started to seeing a little bit weird pattern, kind of uptick of the increasing technology adoption as we are further and further away from the market in really deep rural area. And we discussed, is there some strange pattern that we didn't understand before? Maybe rural farmers are so committed to farming, maybe they are more willing to adopt new technologies, but reality was not like that. It was just simply indicating the fact that the people who can afford to own a cell phone in such rural area are the ones also afford to adopt technology. So we are not really covering entire population there. We are just creating bias inside of that rural community, which is really not good. And so there is a technical term called this phenomenon called street light effect. So it's just classic example as shown in this illustration. You lost your key somewhere in the dark corner, but it's so dark you can't see. So you actually ended up trying to find the key where the light is bright. But obviously you're not going to find it over there. Just good luck find your key over there. So here the data is kind of the key. We know there are the dark corners of our landscape across agricultural, research and publication this domain. But yeah, it's always kind of really difficult to shed a light everywhere to understand, what's going on, especially in the global south, where a lot of these dark corners of data exist. So what's the issue? We had a chance to take a look at inside of that data landscape where this might be a really issue. Back in 2023, when ChatGPT first came out, there was a Washington Post article showing the list of websites that the in this case, Google scraped the content for AI to make it available, AI to analyze and make it available for the pre-training of models. As you can see, Wikipedia is on the top. There's some patent database. These are kind of expected databases. Then we searched CGIR, and just sadly, it was a really, really tiny point in the database, meaning we kept our data in the dark corner of these AI models for some reason. And we also try to understand why is the case, because all our publications and data are open access. We even have a dedicated platform. But why they are not used by AI models? So we started looking into this and we started reanalyzing and reprocessing our data and publication into AI machine-friendly format and started publishing to a platform called Hugging Face. This is a go-to place for AI model developers and researchers to go and release new models and data sets, etc. So we are kind of joining the movement of making more data available and AI ready. So we published a lot of different corpora through this platform. And this map is showing the geographical distribution of the data set. And I mean, there are some concentrated part of the globe, like India, China, and Ethiopia, Kenya, and Nigeria, etc. But I think largely, I think we feel pretty good about where distributed, where represented global South countries in our corpus. So are we good? Not quite. Back in 2023, there was a landmark kind of report came up from Juno Evidence Alliance by CABI. They analyzed more than 6 million scientific articles and see where are the biases and potential gaps in agricultural research. And they found lots of issues. And one of the issues I wanted to bring your attention is the science is just skewed. Again, just highlighting this street light effect. There are a lot of serious based data, but the research is often overlooked for vegetables and legume, livestock, fishery, and forestry. But these are the commodities that provide more nutrition and nutritious food to the population and community. So yeah, there are still a lot of thematic gaps in the research. Geospatial data side, actually, I'm in Seattle this week to learn more about the geospatial foundation model called Alma Earth. This is one of the highest ranked geospatial AI model that makes the geospatial data analysis so easy and quick. This is just amazing how it used to be very complicated and time-consuming geospatial data analysis tasks are so fast-tracked and easy to complete using AI models. This is just fantastic model. And the underlying data set using pre-training of this model is very comprehensive. It's probably the one of the most comprehensive data set they collected and standardized and used in the development of this model. They have more than 285,000 data points. But when you look at the map, You can see the issue. So Africa is largely not sampled for many reasons. They are not the one, the developer of the Ormond Wars is not the one collect the data. They collected or the publishes data. And this is a gap in this field. They're oversampled areas like North America and Europe and China, etc., but are very undersampled in Africa. I mean, they do are deeply concerned about this, and we are probably going to work together as a community to fill those gaps. But this is a little bit of concern because, as you might already know, the farming practice and farm size are really different from global north and south. So we are a little bit concerned that this kind of the overrepresentation of global north geospatial pattern of farming might introduce bias and skewness of the analysis in the AI model downstream. Just let me add one more thing quickly about interoperability. So a lot of data set and databases are developed kind of in a way silos. So in CGIAR, we have two very important kind of breeding data management system. One is called EBS, Enterprise Breeding System. This is for on-station breeding data management system. So when our breeders go out to the field, collect the data, this is a very structured way of following protocol and manage the data very structured way. After that phase, we have another platform called CleanMap that take those varieties, take the farmer's field and collect the performance data in farmer's field. Again, this is a very important step to make sure the varieties perform as good as the station in farmer's field. The problem we found is that those two databases or two systems do not share same standard way of representing or describing varieties. So we found lots of issues when we tried to automate that. So some of them are easy to fix. There are some extra space and different punctuation and typos, etc., different cases, things like that, but that's easy. But we found about 50% of soybean breeding data are not interoperable, but they have completely different way of coding same variety. So yeah, again, why this happened? Because the two systems come from different group of breeding community for different purpose and different ideas. But yeah, we didn't really have the idea of making them interoperable from the beginning. So that's becoming a little bit of issue. This is not something AI can solve. This is really human problem, management problem, culture problem they will have to address. So what should we do? So I address this couple of kind of big issues that I have been also noticing over the years, but I mean, there are other more the non-tech issues as well. So just a few things I highlighted today. Fixing the street light is still the issue. We have some bias, known biases where data coming from. We have to continue looking for opportunity to fill the gap. And the who published data where with what organization, that's still not very equitable across this research community. We have to address that. Standardizing names is just such a simple thing. When we get all the people together in the same room, when we design the platform, we probably didn't have this problem. But only now, when we try to feed this information to AI just cannot join two different tables for the same variety because these are two different things. So that need to be considered from the design phase. Opening more corpus like we are trying to do and keep human in the loop. Again, not everything is really tech problem, so we have to address that. So that will hopefully bring us to more brighter kind of space that everyone can find the key where they get lost. So okay, let me stop here. Thanks.
Thank you, Joe. This was an excellent overview to start our discussion where you laid out all the problems that right now the data landscape is facing. And I really like the streetlight effect analogy indeed, like we are only looking for data where it's already there, but not looking at the gaps, which are more important when it comes to serving the actual user. So with that, let's move to our first lightning talk, which is by Manu Chopra. Manu is the CEO and co-founder of Karya, a data cooperative that provides dignified, well-paid digital work to rural Indians while generating high-quality data sets for AI. A Stanford computer science graduate and a member of Time's 100 Most Influential People in AI, Manu has built Karya into one of the leading models of ethical data collection at scale, proving that closing the agricultural data gap can also mean closing an economic one. And I find it very, very inspiring, Manu. So over to you. Let's hear the story of Karya and how it's closing both the gaps.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me here, Monojit. I hope everyone can see my screen and it's all good. Yes, amazing. It's such an honor to be here. Monojit has seen the career journey and been a part of it from the very beginning. So very grateful to be here. My name is Manu. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Karya. Karya is a nonprofit based here in India, and we're focused on building better AI, better livelihoods. We enable communities across the global south to help build AI in their languages while earning fair income. And we built a smartphone-based platform that I'll show to you in a second that allows workers to complete AI data tasks such as speech recording, annotation, evaluating AI models, and contributing with their local knowledge. And of course, we design tasks to be accessible, to pay fairly with safeguards, and focusing on our community's learning. Monojit has already spoken beautifully about the gap that we see in AI today. AI is already the interface to opportunity, but it is being built in too few languages. And the language delta gap that we see is not just a technology gap, it is a participation gap and is increasingly an economic one. And we have a moral responsibility to get this right across critical domains. Karya closes that gap between who AI serves and who gets to build it. What we have learned, we've now been doing this work for 9 years, what we have learned time and again is that the only way to build inclusive AI models is to employ the communities you want to include. So there is no version of reality in which we build AI models that work for farmers in the global south without the same farmers being employed in building the data sets, in fine-tuning the models, in evaluating the models, and so on and so forth. This is the smartphone-based platform that enables our communities to do the work. It looks like WhatsApp because it's very familiar to our communities. It works without internet. It is designed for our communities and supports all variety of tasks that we need to build the models that we need to build, of course, including speech, image, video, text, evals, and so on and so forth. Over the last 3 years, we have now worked with 150,000 workers across every single state in India. Our communities have built foundational data sets in 100 plus languages in India. 72% of the workers we work with report to be unemployed before joining, which means the economic opportunities we are able to create for them are meaningful. The majority of our workers are women, and over just the last 3 years, our workers have completed 70 million plus paid digital tasks. So a single task could be like evaluating an AI model or telling me what the right answer is for something. And we're now live outside India in 7 other countries, including Ethiopia, Kenya, South Africa, Indonesia, Bangladesh, Ecuador, US, and I'm sure I missed one. But that is what we have been trying to do, thinking deeply about how do we build the global South language infrastructure play in a way that it is done ethically, it is done by the communities, and the communities get paid for contributing to these models. I want to talk to you today about 2 projects we have done in the agricultural space that I think highlight the kind of solutions we are excited about. The first project is called Project Astitwa. This was done in collaboration with the government of Maharashtra, Bhashini, which is India's language infrastructure platform. And of course, Step. I know Jagdish is on the call and may also speak about this. And several other partners, they're not on the call, but IFPRI, everybody else, which is very exciting. Nandurbar is an incredible district in India. It is a predominantly tribal community in the state of Maharashtra, and the people speak this language called a variant of the language called Bhili that is spoken by 10 million people across the country. But before we started this work, the language wasn't supported by any mainstream technology. There were no major data sets available in the language. So what we did was, this is usually what a typical Karya exercise looks like. We started by going to the field. So you see the blue at the top. We started working with the communities and started scoping out domains to understand where would AI technologies be the most impactful, and very quickly learned agriculture was the biggest, like agricultural advice was the biggest place where communities wanted access to better information in their language. We started sourcing content, started converting that into a data collection task that the communities could do. We work not just with farmers, but with agronomists, with government representatives, with Ministry of Agriculture representatives to create a vast variety of workforce that can bring unique insights to the model building. Of course, with our friends at AF Bharat, we then trained the model, worked with the community to validate the model, worked with Bhashini to build the app, and of course, hope to drive user adoption here. This was done over 30 days. Like Jagdish can talk about how intense this was, but there was lots of training workshops conducted. There were contributors who were trained and engaged. And of course, a lot of data was collected to build these models with the community in the district. What is especially heartening about this is because this work was funded by the district, it is owned by the district, and it is almost a new type of AI economy where communities can build the data sets, own the data sets, build the models, own the models, build the technologies, and of course, own the said technologies. This was the kind of effort that required to make this work happen, and was a cross-team effort across this incredible district. And a huge shout out to Dr. Mitali Sethi, who's the district collector for this district, that she spearheaded this project and feels very strongly that her district should have the best language technologies in the world, and rightfully so. The success we saw here is a factor of just how incredible the ecosystem in India is, including incredible people like Xstep. So you see, for some reason, the videos are not loading up, but we were able to integrate the language into Mahavistar, which is India's agri advisory app that is used by, oh, now they come, that was used by 25 million people every month. And people were able to now use this agri advice and get advice in their own language. It was also integrated into the Bhashani app. So you can actually see here someone from Nandabar speaking to the system and getting advice back in their own language. And to us, one of the most heartening things was the Honorable Prime Minister of India was able to address the nation in Bhili for the very first time using the model and the language system that all of us built together. And again, this all happened so quickly and at such a cost-effective rate, and all paid for by the government. And the entire data set, of course, has been open sourced on AI Kosh, which is India's open source version of Hugging Face. So really exciting to see how language systems can very quickly shape into government policy, into public policy, how they can help accelerate access to government services that we all deserve to have access to in our languages. I want to quickly talk about one more thing. Evaluations, as I'm sure we discussed benchmarks. We worked with Dr. Kalika Bali and Dr. Sunena Sitaram, two of the most prolific researchers in the ecosystem today. And together with them, we devised this thing called Samiksha. And the idea behind Samiksha is who gets to evaluate if an AI model is good or not? Who gets to evaluate if an AI technology is good or not? If not the people who we are designing those technologies for. So can we come up with a framework in which we work with domain experts and large-scale communities to actually do this work? Since we came up with this idea, since Dr. Kalika Bali and Dr. Sunena came with this idea, we've expanded this to other work. We now have live leaderboards that you can see across agriculture, across healthcare, across banking, across several critical domains. In agriculture itself, we are in the middle of doing the largest agricultural evaluation in India, focusing on all 22 official languages. And we're doing this for a bunch of labs, and you can actually see some of the work that you see here. And again, the idea is, can we evaluate these model responses on quality, on local, like, is it locally contextual? Do I trust the answer? Is the rubric, and we of course have a separate rubric for experts, which is about, is the agri advice, is it the right season? Is it the right crop? Does it look at government schemes? Does it help me increase my yield? Does it do something else? So very excited about the work we're doing here. And the final thing I'll leave you with is something I said at the very beginning, which is all we have learned, having done this work now for 9 years, is if we truly want to build inclusive AI models, we have to employ the communities we want to include. And I'm sure many of us here are already doing that. I know Jagdish is, and Prashanta is, and Monojit is. So very happy to be part of this panel. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Manu, for this very, very inspiring talk and also the inspiring work. And I mean, my takeaway message from your talk was that if we want to do it, we can do it, like and with the current technology and other things, it can be even pretty fast that we can build something quickly but we have to have the will. Great. And you mentioned about Kalika Bali and Sunena Sitaram. I wanted to say that in our last webinar on language, Sunena was one of the panelists, and she also talked about Samiksha. So our audience who were there in the last webinar would make the connection easily. Thank you again. So now let's move to the third spotlight, and this will be by Jagdish Babu, who is the Chief Operating Officer of Xstep Foundation, where he has spent over a 1.5 decades helping shape India's digital public infrastructure for identity, education, inclusive language, technology, and now he's working on agriculture. And with more than 25 years of experience across the private, government, and nonprofit sectors, Jagdish brings a builder's perspective on what it takes to design open, interoperable data systems that are now powered by AI that actually reach people at scale. So looking forward to your talk, Jagdish.
Thank you. You're able to see my screen and you're able to hear me well, Mark?
Yes.
All right. So first of all, I keep repeating this every time I speak. Personally, being in this sector for so long, I feel this is the most interesting and inclusive time to be in terms of technology reach. Why I say that? For the first time, the power of technology can reach people who have only feature phones. Jawoo talked about it. Manu talked about it. And what I feel excited about is, of course, it's not straightforward. It's not like out there at scale, but the efforts of Bili, for example, that Manu talked about. And now in Bihar and most parts of the other countries which speak English, Hindi and English, Bharat Vistar has rolled out a feature phone first system. It started as an experiment in Maharashtra. Amul, the dairy cooperative, went together with the smartphone option and the feature phone option. But Government of India went first with the feature phone option. Right? That's the power that I'm excited about. That you could hold conversational, you can have a conversation with the most complex technology without having any understanding of the complexity behind and what all it takes. That's more very exciting. The second part that excites me is the interface technology itself. If you think about just one generation behind technology interfaces, they were all designed around a question or a problem to solve. Think about a button in an app. If you have to touch the button, you should know what the problem the button solves. And if you don't know it, you can't use that app. Right? That is a significant limiter for those who are not digital natives. I mean, in fact, something like if you provide me an app with, let's say, Swahili interface, I wouldn't know which button to touch. I don't know what's what, right? That's what the blindness that most of the people would experience when they touch apps. Today, technology removes that requirement to understand technology at all. AI removes the requirement to understand technology. You don't need to understand. It completely reverses it. So in some sense, anybody could use. And these two big capabilities now can be harnessed. And in the initiative that I lead called Open AgriNet, we bring these systems, multiple institutional systems together, combine that with interface technologies powered by the work of Manu and Prashanto and others, right? And the model builders and so on, to be able to help farmers with information. And the larger objective is to improve the overall livelihood opportunities, right? So the idea is, could we bring multiple systems, institutional systems, now and later market systems together, combine that with identity data to be able to provide at first level non-contextual, non-personal advisory to contextual to personal advisories. When you can combine identities, what do I own, what have I sown, where am I belonging, and what has been my schemes that I know I have access to, what are the schemes that I don't have access to, it kind of creates significant choice for the farmers, whether they are in agriculture, aquaculture, sericulture, or livestock, right? Resulting in multiple possibilities. Now, this idea of creating a national infrastructure is the genesis of a larger idea called Vistar in India, which Open AgriNet powers. And in some sense, they launched it this year. But before that, last 1 year back, Maharashtra had launched, a state in India had launched it. And before even the government of India could launch, Ethiopia had launched a similar infrastructure. All of that have one common theme. to establish a farmer-facing simple system powered by these interface technologies I talked about, hiding all the institutional complexity, the data, the things that institutions build, and the accountability they bring underneath to serve accountable advice. Right? So think about the larger idea as a DPI powered by AI as a frame, right? Now, what does that mean? If you think about DPI, in a simplest sense, DPI could be defined as data that data on rails. Any type of data on rails. These rails are common shared, and data, of course, is available to those who have access to. And so, in this context, agri and livestock fisheries and so on and so forth, data on rails. Behind each of these data sources is an institution that's producing these data and services, and they have put their might behind it. And it's a continuous improvement story. It's not a one-time data set, right? It's a service as well. And when you combine that with the power of AI, which is continuously evolving in the last 2-3 years, significantly evolving, where you're not using significant reasoning capabilities, but mostly slight reasoning and more inferencing capabilities, then you are bringing the power of data to farmers in their own language, to their question on the device they own, irrespective. Right? This is the conceptualization of Open AgriNet, the DPI powered by AI. Now, 6 instances have gone live. And each instance is doing very well. One of them Manu talked about, which is Mahavistar. And significant innovations are going at the AI space. And significant more data is coming together. So many more schemes have come together. Now the move is to bring market systems together. So similarly, Amul, the largest dairy cooperative in the world, has gone live called Sarlaben. Bharat Vistar has gone live with Bharti as a feature phone number to call in. And similarly, Ethiopia and Kenya have gone live. Now to Bharat Vistar, in next 1.5, 2 months, 10 states instances would join in a formation that leverages the overall agentic orchestration framework. Yet the data belongs to where it belongs, to the institutions, and data is not combined into AI. Right? AI is a very thin layer in the scheme of things. And when you connect these two, today, a farmer in Maharashtra, state of Maharashtra, can access the resources of Bharat Vistar because Bharat Vistar and Mahavistar are connected. They don't share the AI backbone, they only share the data backbones. So imagine a data backbone you create and then an AI system that it brings on the top. So AI becomes replaceable. So Amul got connected to Bharat Vistar. So the dairy farmers in Gujarat can get access to farming advice because Amul is about livestock, right? They don't have farming data. Now, because Bharat Vistar has it, now folks in Amul can get advice on farming via Bharat Vistar. Mahavistar has actually combined AgriStack data also together now. Personalized advice is happening there because you could actually bring multiple data sources together. In the larger scheme of things, multiple use cases have been unleashed. In Bharat Vistar alone, more than 14 million questions have been asked in the last 3 months. Similarly, they are asking about agriculture practices, what benefits they can assign, and then market information they are asking. So eventually the larger idea is when we can bring multiple data sources together institutionally, both of the public systems, government systems, as well as market systems and their services, and combine that with a trustworthy, reliable, accountable AI, that's when the trust can happen. So that's the larger idea of Open AgriNet, where we are working to bring multiple data. First of all, cultivate data sources, because now data is being put to use, that data starts getting better and more contextual. You know what questions are asking for which you don't have answers for. So institutions get the feedback. It is not only one-way flow, it's a two-way flow. What questions are not being answered, are not being completely answered. So those informations go back into the system. So that way you actually improve both contextualization as well as relevance of data that you have. Thank you.
Thank you, Jagdish. It's a huge scale and complexity of work that you summarized in a very short time. But one thing that very clearly came out was this whole point of it's an infrastructure, ecosystem, and community problem. Like if I connect also to Manu's talk, so it's not like a problem that we solve in isolation, but everything has to be
Absolutely.
connected.
Absolutely. Just for a BD alone, Manu and team brought together the whole gang, involved more than 10 parties, just to get one language in one state for conversational system. Right? It's actually a heavy duty communicative system as well. Yeah.
Yeah, would definitely love to hear more on that during the panel discussion that will follow after Prashanta's talk, our last spotlight. So Prashanta Kumar Ghosh is a professor in the Department of Electrical Engineering in the Indian Institute of Science. He has a PhD from University of Southern California and has approximately 20 years of research experience in science and technology related to speech, audio, and language, particularly in Indian languages. Prashanto has taken up major initiatives for creating open source resources and models in Indic languages through projects like Respin, Cispin, and Vani. So we are going to hear about Respin from Prashanto. Over to you.
Thanks, Monojit. I hope all of you can hear me and see my screen.
Yeah.
Thanks. I would like to refer to what Monojit said in the beginning. The performance of an AI system is as good as the data that has been fed to build it. So I'd like to unpack a little bit in this small few minutes of talk about this word data, particularly in the context of voice AI for agriculture. And these are all from learnings from the project Respin that was funded by Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. This was run over nearly 40 districts across various parts of India, as you see highlighted here. The outcome of Respin was nearly 12,000 hours of rate speech from 9 Indian languages, but not the main languages. Actually, they are variants that led to 40 plus different districts or regions. And these sentences were created by local people from those districts to really reflect the agriculture specific terms. And they are recorded by local people, farmers, and many others. And the idea was to create these sentences so that they are rich in agricultural. And this data is now open sourced, available in IAAI Kosh as well. While we make this data open source, as you can see stats, I don't want to really talk about that, but there are two main learnings we had while open sourcing the data. Number one was the ethical aspect of the data, right? There are a lot of struggle I and the team had to go through, particularly being within the academic institution, which is IISc, to get the rights to put this data out, right? Particularly because this data should not have any content, not necessarily abusive, but something that may mean differently than what it is intended for. Because every data point had to be listened to and made sure they do not contain anything that we don't want. So that was the challenge of putting the data out. The second learning that we had, although we put the data out, how do we know how much it helped to move the needle in the overall landscape of the voice AI system, particularly for agriculture, right? And that answer I don't have for Respin, right? Because there have been several downloads and you do not know specifically how much it helped move at that point of time. One important aspect in any data is the quality that determines the system that is built on that data, how well it will perform. Particularly for Respin, we took extreme care in creating the text that were read out, the audio that were finally recorded. You may be surprised to hear that although you present a text to someone, he do not necessarily read that text. In fact, they can just play a radio and they hope that that will get accepted. That radio doesn't even, whatever comes out of the radio gets recorded, it doesn't match with the audio at all. So to really make sure that there is no mismatch between the audio and text. And for any data set, it's very important we learn that we should have a gold quality data, we should have a silver and bronze. that I mark them with green, yellow, or orange and red, so that the developers know what data to use in what way. All data are useful, but in various ways. I think this very well connects to the development and the technology layer. How we build data can really enable the development happen very fast. Lastly, I'd like to highlight an important learning from the field on the ground. Although we collected rate speech, it's very well known to many of us, all of us, that you can also collect spontaneous speech and conversational speech, which we are doing in other projects, as Monojit mentioned in Project Vani, for example. However, what we realize is that the difficulty in recruitment of speaker is very high in case of rate speech. If it's a conversational speech, you can just get two people and ask them to speak, right? Because that's very easy. Or it's a rate speech, reading something accurately is not an easy task, we realize. And spontaneous comes somewhere in between, because they have to speak on some topic spontaneously. It is also a cognitive load, which is not that much for a conversational speech. However, if you look at the naturalness, rate speech lacks most of the naturalness because it's artificial way of reading out a sentence, right? But conversational has maximum naturalness. If that's the case, then what is the benefit of collecting rate speech? What happens if you collect rate speech? We realize that we can control what are the keywords to cover, right? What is the vocabulary that you want to cover? That we have a good control on. If it is conversational, it is not necessarily the case. We have to really select these speakers carefully to ensure that we cover the vocabulary. And also that is connected to the transcription challenge. For rate speech, it automatically comes with 80% of the transcription ready, while for conversational speech, it's quite difficult and challenging. And that, in turn, tells you the budget, right? For rate speech is much lower than conversational speech with transcription. So these learnings helped us to think what will be an optimal way to combine these various modalities to create voice AI system. It's an intersection of budget, quality, and the type of data that you create in that 3D space, so that the output of the AI system really delivers what it's supposed to deliver to the society, to the user that we intend to. Thank you.
Thank you, Prashanto. Those were really useful insight about different kinds of data and how they should be used in a system. And with that, let's open the floor for a panel discussion where we want to double click on some of these themes which has already emerged. And one theme that I see is Manu, you talked about, and Prashanta, you also talked about creation of data and how creating data is, there are various challenges in how we create data. Then comes the issues of interoperability and access, because until the data is discoverable and data is accessible, which Jawoo you refer to, Jagdish you refer to, is very important. Then comes you have to then use that data in building models, and there are various challenges. And finally, of course, depending on the kind of data and the kind of model you build, then what benefit the end user gets in the field. And I'm thinking of pharma as the end user in all these cases. So with that picture in mind, I first wanted to ask this issue of, today's AI system seems to be built on the premise that more the data, the better the system. And of course, quality matters, but it's almost seems like bigger the model and more the data, the better the system. And that's what everybody's running after. But we know that there is an inherent trade-off on how much data we can get, right? Inherent limitation, especially when we come to Global South, when we come to agriculture and all that. So do you think, and this probably is more a question to Prashanto and Jawoo, who mentioned this point, do you think is it a technology issue or is it the right assessment? In other words, what I'm asking is it possible to build technology with less amount of data and still make it very useful. Probably there is already an data efficiency gap, and nobody is thinking about it. Yeah, any order you want to answer.
Jawoo, please go ahead.
Okay, sure. Yeah, no, I think this is very interesting about the geospatial data, the geospatial foundation model as an example. Um, it's just like a language model. We kind of went through four different variants of same model, like nano, tiny, small, and large, kind of depending on the number of parameters they used. And the analysis showed the bigger model doesn't necessarily show higher accuracy. And the reason being, it's a little bit still um, mysterious, but I think it's more useful to have smaller model uh, trained on very high quality, the domain specific knowledge corpus or data corpus, so that the performance of conducting specific task is higher than general purpose model with larger parameter trying to do everything, but in the end there are gaps here and there. So yeah, I think as you said, this is still emerging field. I don't think we have full grasp of what's the right amount of data to train the specific purpose models. But yeah, the technology advancement seem to show that yeah, the more doesn't necessarily the better. But it's not about the amount. I also wanted to highlight the variety and kind of domain specificities that provide the good enough or quality context. The agriculture is full of context, the scale, time, the seasonality regulation, and like everything farmers are doing cannot be decided on the knowledge of 10 years ago. So there are a lot of context specificity. So I think that's more important probably than the sheer amount of data.
Yeah, so Manoj, I think that's an interesting question. I have an observation to share and a comment. So the observation first is the following. From our earlier experiment, at least for the voice AI part, we have seen that a 50 hours of gold quality data with a simpler model gives as much as performance with a 500 hours of silver quality data with a big model, right? That's the observation. So not necessarily more data, bigger model is better. However, if we look at in the context of a language landscape like India or Africa, where languages are not really discrete and there are some connections between languages, developing the way the model development is happening, architectural development is happening, they don't necessarily exploit the structure, the skeleton of this language structure, right, in the country or the region. So if we can really utilize that, the requirement of certain branches in that skeleton will be much, much less instead of being a brute force approach of putting more data into it. But that requires non-trivial job of really coming up with novel and effective architectural learning and training paradigm.
So you were saying that there are a lot of patterns within the context we are operating, and we are not exploiting them enough when we are designing our systems. And not only the sharing of the languages, like if you see there are other common contexts which are shared across global south. For instance, the farm example that you were showing, Joe, the images, I imagine that while there's a big divide in how global south images look from, I think you had Mozambique as one example and US as another example, and how different they are. But Mozambique might be a lot similar to how Kenya looks like or how Indonesia looks like. So those similarities can be exploited as well.
Absolutely. Just to quickly add, we need more noisy, messy data as well. I think that's the data really stress test real world the robustness of the performance. So yeah, I think that real world consideration is really important.
Yeah, and then the other question is, of course, there is data, and we know that a lot of data is being collected as we speak. But how easily accessible and usable these data sets are. And all of you, especially Jawoo and Jagdish, you touched upon these interoperability and sharing and access. So I wanted to touch, get your views on what did you think, or what you think the most important challenges there are, and what as a community we should do.
Yeah, so there are two parts to the story. One part of the story is to be the data that can help decision-making systems, right? So therefore, how appropriate is the data for that, and then how extensive is the data, all of that comes into the picture. I suspect much of the data collection efforts are for research purposes and not for training purposes. And therefore, is it enough to be able to say that, okay, we could actually develop a decision-making system that could possibly help the human intelligence that has been in practice for years, right? But there is other class of data services, for example, weather as an idea, that itself needs to be honed. The way I see it and the way the data I get to see tells me that much of the time, the services that are based on data have been in their own silos so far. Very rarely used by farmers themselves, right? They have been put out for sure, but rarely used by the farmers themselves. First time AI systems are using it, right? To answer a question, because farmers do not have a data question. Farmer has a question relevant to them. And for that, there is data needed, but they are not in a position to use the data themselves. But AI can actually access these systems. First, I see that we need to be a lot more extensive about the service, data-related services we provide. Significant gaps exist. And so in some sense, get the basic super right first for some of the basic systems that we provide, whether it relates to availability of inputs, whether it's related to weather and related services, and soil maps and systems. And finally, actual advice, which are hyperlocal, right? Generally, it is not hyperlocal, right? It is there, knowledge is there, but it is not brought to the table. So we now have established the rails that actually can take. It's almost like having a plumbing system to your home. Now is the time to feed good quality water. In that water, even if you put a drop of nectar, it actually spreads to everybody. So that's the first order of priority for bringing the data systems right, to make sure the current services are complete and accurate, so that things can start working for farmers.
Okay. And Joe, do you want to add anything?
No, I think that's a good, yeah.
Okay, so as a follow-up to your point, Jagdish, who should be doing this, right? So you said that we should make the things reasonable, then who should be doing this?
Yeah, that's a great point, right? So some 3-4 years back when I was thinking about this, data everywhere, not a drop to drink along those frames, right? You have data all over the place, but no service is available. But then you realize there are scientists, institutions built large scale, and for last 50 odd years that have been groomed, exist. They need feedback. Well-meaning people want to help. They want to take their advice to the people, like what Jawoo showed a slide in which how less percentage of that data goes to people, right? Actual farmers, right? So they are all well-meaning people wanting to take the story to the ground. So we need infrastructure is not their strength. So different area of work. You see what I'm saying? So first, ability to flow this knowledge down, right? Mostly relevant knowledge. Much of it is not relevant because much of it is for advancement of the science. But what is relevant, flow it down in a very administratively accountable way, number one. Number two, most importantly, flow it back, the intelligence back to say what of it is not relevant, what more is needed. This two-way pipe is the most important dimension to me that bridges farmers who are very intelligent in their practices, been doing so and so, but there are blind sides to it because crops have changed, the seeds have changed, the crops have changed, the seasons have changed, fertilizers have changed, the soil has changed, and everything is continuously moving. In this frame, what I need to do is a space of blindness to farmers. And that, when it uncovers, the system uncovers it to the scientists, they can feed it back. So therefore, I see it as a two-way system bridged by a very solid DPI.
Okay. And since we are talking about farmers, and Manu, you have been working with farmers very closely, or the end user while you are collecting the data from them. What do you think when they give you the data? So I see two parts. Like one is, of course, it's a digital work for which they get paid. But what other expectations they have, or what other curiosity or questions they have when they provide the data, or concerns they have?
Great question. And I think that, look, in general, we start every project with an assumption that our communities have the talent to do the work, right? Like starting with this very uh, sometimes naive, just core assumption that talent is universal, opportunity is not. So irrespective of what the task is, our communities can figure it out and say, should a pilot not work, it's a failure of the training material and not a failure of the community, right? Uh, and that sounds obvious in hindsight, but so many, I mean, every 6 months at Karya, we discover I'm so sorry, we discover a form of work that the world would say, oh, this is where we can't engage with traditionally low income communities. And we've been able to prove, no, that's not true. We can do that work, right? So 1 year ago, it was like model evals. Right now, it's RL environments. But again, time and again, we've been able to show the right level of training and the right level of almost like a graduation approach that takes people through basic task one, then task two, then task three, and then collate all the skills learned through that process. We're able to get our communities to do the kind of work that that models need, basically. Uh, People's reaction to the work is always incredible. We have written so many research papers, some together, talking about how communities react to this sort of digital work. In general, across the global south, language and culture intersect so beautifully, right? So communities feel this deep sense of pride um, in being able to do this work, in being able to teach AI systems how to speak their language. The number of times community members have told us they have the same respect for their language as they do for their parents. We've had community members tell us that, I mean, there was in the early days of Kara, before we realized we have to stop people from doing rework, people would finish the work and do it again because they just didn't even have access to stories in their local languages. So they would just like, get somebody else and tell the stories again while collecting the kind of red speech that Prashanta was talking about. And I think to us, we just see, I mean, we see the highest pre-validation accuracies of any data pipeline in the world that we know of. And we see those really high pre-validation data accuracies because we pay our communities at least 20x the local minimum wage, right? And I think for us, in fact, done a lot of research that shows a link between the wages we pay and the quality of data we get. And that should we reduce the wages, the quality will go down, and that makes a lot of sense, right? So I think that's been our learning in general. As we have expanded our work, which means the same community member is now doing 5 to 10 different projects instead of just one project, right? Like like just like a one project and done. And now our goal is to engage community members across multiple projects so that both they make a meaningful economic, they get a meaningful espresso shot to their incomes. But more importantly, they're able to then get a full cycle of the AI pipeline. And I think we've had some really special projects there. We had this project with DeepMind where we brought Google Translate to 16 languages in Northeast India, languages like Kok Parok, well spoken in Tripura. And we did, of course, the workers are incredible. They built, the translation corpora between English and Kok Parok. And of course, you have to use a Heathrow language in the middle because the number of people who speak English and Kok Parok, we couldn't find enough of those people to do the work. So we had to go through Hindi in the middle. And we give out these certificates. And once a week, somebody tags me on LinkedIn, one of the people we worked with, and would put out a post saying, like, because of me, Google Translate speaks Kok Parok. Which is a bit of an exaggeration because there are 10,000 people, and I'm pretty sure data is just one part of the complex cycle that is Google Translate. But it shows the kind of ownership people feel over technology, right? Like Fei Li says, the fundamental challenge we have in the world is our relationship with technology is broken. the average person I meet in the US is no longer excited about technology because technology is a foreign force that happens to us. It doesn't happen with our consent. It doesn't happen. It doesn't happen in ways that is benefiting the average person in the global north anymore. And thus the anger that you see against the tech sector, right? We need to change the relationship we have with technology. Like it needs to come from us in a way that gives us both ownership over the technologies we are building, whether through giving them our data or whether through building models, but also needs to have direct agency. Like we should be able to get to decide what problems we want technology to solve for us. And I think the kind of work that Jagdish, Prashanta are doing is giving communities that agency, right? Because it is not just like data collection and done. Like when Step works with a community member, like it is a like it is the whole cycle from data collection to model building to fine tuning to evals, and we need to find a way to center global South communities or just global communities actually in that entire model chain so that we can almost redesign a new AI economy that is inclusive and just as default for everyone.
Yeah, so a lot of very deep points you made there, and each can have its own discussion. Like agency is such an important topic. Um, but I'm very excited to hear you talked about Tripura and Kokborok. So I'm from Tripura, and I most people don't even know that there exists a language called Kokborok. So very glad and exciting to hear for me that somebody's working on Kokborok and now Google Translate or can
Yeah,
speak Kokborok.
it's live right now. It can speak
Uh-huh.
Kokborok, and huge kudos to Manish, Harsh, and the team at DeepMind that actually made that happen.
Okay, great, great. Anybody, Jawoo, Jagdish, Prashant, everybody, please, jump in, or if you have questions for other panelists or any point, please go ahead. And
Yeah, so let me also quickly add another thing we have been finding as a real barrier, which is licensing terms. So one of the reasons that we realized initially when ChatGPT and these web scrapers are avoiding CGIR is our licensing term. Sometimes there is even no licensing term defined by researcher, and AI company just avoid that. Just that's a risk. Our default license is Creative Commons attribution license. It's called CC BY. And attribution in AI model, if you think about it, it's a really hard thing to provide. You can't assure exactly what source of data comes into this spaghetti of AI model to generate certain type of text and the output. So I think that's also very not AI friendly. It makes sense for researchers, but everyone want to be recognized for their output and achievement and publications. But it's really hard for machine to honor the license. So yeah, so that's another thing we probably have to rethink about licensing. We came up with some kind of new licensing template called model content licensing. This allows your content to be used in training of AI model, but it assures that your content is not going to be regenerated verbatim by AI model. So we are testing that kind of new AI-friendly licensing term with some publishers with proprietary content, and we are making some progress over there as well.
yeah, and a very important point. And attribution is such a hard problem. I agree. It will keep researchers busy for very long in AI. I can imagine. Jagdish, please go ahead.
Yeah. So I had a question for Jawoo.
Yeah.
I see that a lot of effort is going into training the AI models with data sets. My question is, it seems to me as a farmer myself, little scary that some amount of past data is used to predict my future crop related decisions.
Right.
How and versus advice from the known, so that some practices that I may be following from the well known, well understood science, I uncover the blindness by informing me versus telling me what decision I should be making because of predictive models.
Right.
How ready are these? I kind of sometimes get scared a little about that, there's so much
Yeah.
effort going into training these models with data.
Right. No, I'm with you. This is why I think I appreciated you commenting on this feedback loop kind of broken or non-existent in agriculture. Like, if you think about reinforcement learning, it really strengthens the model capability by providing feedback in structured way. We are not really giving that opportunity for farmers to engage with this modeling system and collect their feedback. So at the same time, we get a lot of feedback and user response to the system from, global north and non-farming community for farming content. So yeah, I agree with you. This is concerning. How we get around it? Again, I provide some recommendation myself. So connecting with dynamic tool, it's not something I mentioned, but there are protocols that we know like MCP kind of ways to make dynamic content providers connected to language models and incorporate the new knowledge into this. So yeah, I think that's also another thing, as Monojit asked earlier, maybe the base foundation model doesn't have to be, the God level of, kind of the capability, but maybe it's smart enough to know where to go and what tools to use and what kind of corpus, what kind of knowledge to fetch, so that provide the most useful and really actionable and meaningful advisory to farmers, and really trying to be more proactive in getting feedback. Um, I found the Substack of a farmer in Slovenia doing farming, sweet potato farming with Claude. And she kind of chronicle all day by day of her steps, going through making farming decision by Claude. And she implement that in the field. By doing so, she becomes the interface between AI and agriculture. And she calls herself called, I'm the middleware in farming. But that really provide, it's very insightful, kind of inspiring story. I'm following, there are a lot of humor in it and there are a lot of trial and error in it. But that interface, she providing lots of feedback, lots of observation back to the AI system. She get really capable companion, farming companion called Claude, to help her improving productivity, etc. So I think that's kind of what we are currently missing, and I'm really curious what can be done about it in the future. Yeah.
Wow. Thank you.
And Prashanta?
Yeah, I mean, it's more like a question here to everybody. Think of this in this way. Suppose I'm a farmer, I'm the user of this system that we are thinking about the resources to build it. Now, let's say I am today, when I have a doubt, I have something to know, I go to my neighbor, also a farmer, and get the answer. Now, I'm talking about at scale. When a farmer like me will switch from asking a neighbor to an AI system? And is there an answer that exists today that at scale, this percentage of farmer prefers AI over asking a human at this very point of time? Of course, with time, it will change. And so essentially, I'm asking, how do you help AI get adopted by farmer as a concept? Is that a real challenge, or it's something that farmers are hungry for, that they are really waiting for it to happen? Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
Manu,
Whoever
ladies
wants to
first.
comment.
You go first, Jagdish.
All right. So, Prashanto, this is my favorite topic. All right. So, it's like, imagine you have a Google phone, and you have Google Maps on it, right? So, adoption of Google Maps is not equal to I use it every day. But when I need a direction, when I am lost, or when I'm anxious to say whether I reach on time, I pull up my Google phone. The question of adoption is to what anxieties, to what problems do we have a solution for? Number one. Number two, this is what is the top of the mind recall, that it is around you so much so that, like the corner shop in IISc that you go to, when you have a need or you want to have a tea or something like that, you know where to go. You don't think about it. It is around so long that it is part of your subconscious memory that you pull up the phone and touch Google Map and get to it. Is the game here. It's not to say that I have the magic answer, therefore all of you start using it, and therefore all of you become prosperous. The journey is not so linear. So you are persisting and you are constant. The other thing is you have to be constant. Imagine the IAC cafe keeps changing every day. You say, I don't know what, this looks unfamiliar. This may not be the place that I want to get to, right? It has to be constant, the same look and feel. So I kind of take examples of Google email, right? The Gmail that we all use. When was the last time you saw a button getting added on Gmail? I don't remember. I've been using it for the last 10 years, right? But is it that it is constant behind the scene? Not at all. They must be doing million things behind the scene, right? So I cannot say you have to be constant. You got to be persistent with it, and you got to be present throughout. So the way to receive adoption is that I see connect the system to multiple facets of life of a farmer on a continuous basis. Today, it seems relevant, but it is not there yet. At least wherever I experience, it's not there yet, right? And therefore, it's an adoption curve story. 10%, 15% of the folks, obviously the innovators come and mess with it and really like about it. But it is not the mainstream story. But for PM Kisan scheme in India, if you don't get your benefit on time, this is the benefit. This is the story to go to. And that is how you keep making this continuously relevant by connecting that to the what matters at the current point of time. It may not be agriculture advice at the present moment, right?
Mhm.
So that's how you can get scheme benefit, but also it gives you agriculture advice. Amul yesterday launched a microcredit facility on the system. That's another way to say microcredit is important. Let's talk about that on the system, while it also serves advice on how you get better yield from your cows, right?
Thanks, Jagdish. And we would like to take some questions from the audience, but Manu, do you want to make a quick comment before that because your
Yes,
hand was up?
I'll make a quick comment. And again, fully agreed. I've always thought AI diffusion as a whole is one part of the goal, but the larger part of the goal is making sure these models are usable. We did this large scale study, Prashanta, to study do people trust the responses that models give? And there's actually like doesn't seem to be a correlation between accuracy of the answer and trust of the answer. Like, do people trust it? And we ask questions like, would you ask another expert in the village before you trust this answer? Would you do another Google search before you trust this answer? And it was actually very interesting. Consistently, GPT-5 performs the worst on trust, even though it performs really high on accuracy. And the kind of mistakes we saw, and for every time a person gave a low trust score, and we did over 500,000 of these public evals, and we're like going through them right now, we would ask our workers to give an audio response on why are you saying you don't trust this answer, right? And we are going through those audio recordings. But some of them are very interesting. So if you ask like, hey, I'm not feeling well, these are the symptoms, what medicine should I take? GPT would consistently cite Mayo Clinic as a source of the medicine, versus Gemini would cite like a government of India circular. So one of the workers, and I listened to this recording, was said, "What is Mayo Clinic? I don't know it." Right. So how do I know this answer is right? How do I know this answer is wrong? In cases where in Kolkata, we noticed speaking in Bengali, some of the Western models would cite public government schemes that belong to Bangladesh, and they would just get confused across the border. And then again, communities would know that, hey, this scheme does not exist, right? So then you would see low trust. Very, very interesting things. And then, of course, lots of misinformation to Jagdish's point, like that just spreads across. There was some very interesting misinformations that we see across entire districts sometimes. So a bunch of these trends, and we have a paper coming out on that, on what makes a model response trustworthy. And I think there's a link between trust and like then acting on the said advice as the first place I go to, and so on and so forth.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, trust was the theme which came up in our first webinar quite a bit, and it's a recurrent theme in this whole space. Time for some audience questions. Maybe we will have time for two. So can we have some? Like I
Yes,
see
of
a lot of
course.
questions, but let's just
Yep.
get two.
So the first question is from Piyush, and they are asking a question I think that relates back to what you were just talking about, Manu. So if there's anything else you want to add, that would be great. The question is, as artificial speech and text become common and realistic, how will researchers differentiate real data from AI generated data?
Can
It's
take a
really,
yeah,
yeah.
Jawoo, please go ahead.
I'm sorry, just quickly said, it's really hard. It's getting really difficult. Like a few years ago, synthetic data used to be something just out of necessity for the lack of training data. People started coming up with a way to realistically regenerate training data out of existing pool of data. Now it's so good, and it's really difficult to tell the difference. There is a movement called okay, so sorry, just to make sure. The content credentials. Content credentials is a kind of initiative developed by coalition of all the companies working on AI, and we are also looking into this. So the content credential provide a standard for you to provide the provenance of how this specific content is generated. For each voluntary, there are a lot of cases probably you don't want to follow the standard because you don't necessarily want to tell the world you used AI. So yeah, so it's in tech side, I think there are opportunities and kind of solutions and approaches that people are exploring and trying to promote, just like content credentials and watermarking of data and images, etc. But always the problem of adoption and people, the users and the content generators, if they have enough incentive to adopt that standard. So yeah, it's a really complex issue and could become a really like big problem in the near future. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, one observation and hypothesis, Monojit, if I may. The observation is that we try to do an experiment where we give an English sentence to an OpenAI model and ask, okay, translate that into Telugu, but Telugu spoken by someone from Vizag, give an output. Then Telugu spoken by somebody in Karimnagar, Telugu spoken by somebody in Anantapur, Telugu spoken by somebody in Krishna. And we have correct translation by each of those native people. It turns out that the OpenAI model gives nearly same translation in all cases, while human does not. Because the local way of speaking, those are different, and saying those are different. So hypothesis is probably there are more of those nuances has to still go into the model for the model to be rich enough. So we are still not probably there.
I can also
Yeah.
quickly come in here with something from Dr. Sunena. I'm putting this on the chat. She's actually, synthetic data is great. It is very useful. Data collection is very hard. We need synthetic data, but it has severe limits that Dr. Sunena and Dr. Kalika's research has found, especially on LLM as a judge and automating some of these data collection in that it, as you can imagine, creates a lot of bias and it gets very scary very quickly. And this paper talks about models being built on synthetic data in general already served. So we really need to make sure that doesn't happen. That said, still very important.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and maybe one very quick question, last one.
Yes, last one. Okay. So this, I believe, was asked by Lance, and you may have given some answer in the chat already, Jagadish, but just wanted to bring it forward as well. Does the panel have any opinion on what types of data are improving faster than others?
Well, I answered a different question. So I'm in some sense the other end of the data, the consumer of the data. But what I see is the relevance of weather data and improving the availability of weather data, market prices data of the commodities, right? Seed availability, machinery availability, all these services data are all coming together because now there is a dedicated consumer of that data, which was now visible. Possibly that in the past, such data was consumed, but nobody knows what happened to that data. Now there is a customer for the data, and the customer is giving feedback that it is not available or in the way that they are not available. So that I see is improving significantly. to allow the way that Jawoo took about the farmer who cultivated using clod and the loop, and I will take that experiment and figure out a way to implant experiments so that that data can create a feedback loop to see what happens and what really story happens. I'll become one myself in my own farm. But that said, these are the systems that I see are improving very, very fast. The other systems of data is the scheme information data, scheme data of the real particular farmer, what is the avail, what has he availed, and what that is another one I see improving fast in the way I see it. Because in the past, again, when you have your own scheme and your own portal, there's nobody else asking you how much time it is available and not available. Okay. When an AI system uses it, can tell you how many times it's not available, right? So I see that institutionally, systems improving big time, and then creating need for market information which is not available, so that we can connect linkage those market information. So eventually I see an ecosystem, the way Karya talked about an ecosystem. So similar information can come together from a market side as well for all the missing services. That's how I see improve from a data systems perspective. The other data systems that I see, that visibly see, is the language data sets. Like, for example, the work that Vokaya did for Beely, and then now for various other languages that this work is starting up. What I notice is so much more is needed for contextual translation across contexts. Agriculture has so many contexts, right? It is not vocabulary, just bringing in vocabularies only. As Prashanta talked about, that it varies so much that people find it not at all contextual. So that's a missing link that I see big time. A lot more data is needed to make it relevant. Else we have one flat screen for across the region, disregarding the variations in the language people speak.
Yeah, I do
However,
believe like sustainable farming data, which are very contextual and traditional knowledge, these will take a lot more time to grow, and these are very slow. But I think I mean, it has been a fascinating conversation, and so glad to have you all here today. And I'm sure our participants, attendees have also learned a lot and enjoyed a lot. I can already see a lot of comments from them. So let's close the panel discussion here, and over to you, Courtney.
Thank you all for those great questions. That's a wrap on the Q&A for today. Now we want to turn it around and hear from you. We're moving into our community polling segment. This is your chance to shape where the series goes next and to help us understand what's happening on the ground with your own data. The two quick questions for you before I pass it to Monojit. I'll open the poll now. First one is, what's next? So what is one topic you think this community must tackle in the future? We'll give it a second. You see answers coming in, and I can keep these live as we pass to Monojit. The second question is, what could your organization contribute in terms of data to building better agricultural data for smallholder AI advisory? I'm going to launch this one as well. So go ahead and drop your responses in the poll and chat now. We'll take a moment to let responses come in, and you can continue filling them out as Monojit closes this out. Over to you, Monojit.
Sure. Thank you, Courtney. I thank you all our panelists today for joining us despite your busy schedule and sharing your experiences. It has been a wonderful conversation. Thank you, all our attendees, and I definitely would like to thank our funders, Gates Foundation, and UAE Presidential Court, who supports the Institute. And this is brought to you by IAAI with the partnership of AGEX. I also want to make this announcement for the upcoming webinar, which actually is on the topic which came up quite a bit in today's conversation about closing the loop. So how from the field, the information passes over to the entire infrastructure, finally getting into the model. So how the information flows back and closes the loop. So Tule, who is joining IAAI as the head of technical adoption, so technical assistance and adoption. So she will be leading this session in August. So join our mailing list to get the announcement. Thank you and see you next month.